Okay, and here we are now on page 4 of this section. For some of you, you might want to walk away from the videos at this point for this section. Go do the practice problems up until number 22. Stop in the early 20s there. When it changes from just the translation like we've been practicing to these more story type problems. There's more things happening here. Get really good at the first part of translating, then come back, watch the examples, and try this next part, because it really does take it up a notch on this next section. So, fair warning, if you get stuck, just pause. If you're having trouble following along on these videos for pages 4 and for pages 5, go ahead and pause, and then go back to the practice sets and work your way up to the application exercises. This is where we're dealing with we're applying now what we know to kind of real type situations. Okay, all that to be said, next thing you want to remind yourself is to read thoroughly. Okay, it's very tempting to just slide all the way past and get right to the meat of this problem. I apologize for the small print on the video here. You should be able to see it on the notes in front of you though. Make sure you read. Start reading here so you get the full information. It may not be information you use in the end, but at least you have some context and it'll keep you from going astray. I'll explain what that means in just a minute. Compared with Europeans, American employees use less vacation time. Then they show a graph. The graph is titled Average Vacation Time for Europeans and Americans. And going up here is vacation time in weeks. They have it marked from 3 to 9. And then down on the bottom here, Italy, they have the countries, Italy, Germany, France, England, and US. And then it shows the bar graph of how much. They give an actual data amount for England, for France, England 6.6, France 7, Germany 7.8. Now, whatever the problem's about to ask us, I feel compelled to mention that it's kind of a weird comparison because they say we use less vacation time. I think really the issue is we're given less vacation time. Most of us standard jobs, 2 weeks vacation, right? So of course we're going to use less if that's what we're given. So it's not that I'm in shock over all this. Now who knows if, well, they are talking about employees, so people who work. So the European work system may be totally different. There may be lots more vacation time allotted for the, anyway, all that to say, just be careful how you read things because you got to look at the context of what they're giving to you. Okay, so let's read what they're asking us to do here. The average time Italians spend on vacation exceeds the average American vacation time by 4 weeks. The combined average vacation time for Americans and Italians is 11.8 weeks. On average, how many weeks do Americans spend on vacation? How many weeks do Italians spend on vacation? That was my first read through. Resist the temptation to start jumping in and pulling numbers and setting up equations. Take a deep breath. Read it a second time and force yourself to go all the way back up. Paired with Europeans, American employees use less vacation time. Okay, nothing jumps out at me here except that this one's going to be smaller than this one. Okay. And then here's my graph again. They give us numbers for Germany, France, and England. These are the numbers we don't know, the US and Italy, okay? Second read through on the actual problem. The average time Italians spend on vacation exceeds the average American vacation by 4 weeks. The combined average vacation time for Americans and Italians is 11.8 weeks. On average, how many weeks do Americans spend on vacation? How many weeks do Italians spend on vacation? Okay, so I'm going to identify my goal here. And that's usually what the question mark is attached to. So, how many weeks do Americans spend on vacation? How many weeks do Italians spend on vacation? So, I've got Americans' time on vacation, and then I've got to find the Italians' time on vacation. I'll underline the Italians in the different color there. So here's a couple things. One is instead of naming these X and Y, they're 2 different values, so they have to be 2 different numbers. Or 2 different letters. and I'm going to use ones that help me understand which one is which. You can pick X and Y. If you do that, then write it down somewhere, like put your X next to American and Y next to Italian so that you have a reference point for what's what, okay? So don't try to keep that kind of stuff in your head. Clear your brain of everything that you don't need right now so you can focus on the work. I'm going to help myself out and give a capital A for Americans and a capital I for Italians. That way I know the entire time, I never have to wonder which one I'm working with. Okay? Now the next thing I want to point out is I see the word average happening a lot. Here's why I want you to read all the way from the beginning. Because you're not being asked to find an average. They already have figured out the averages. Okay, they're just describing these values. Once we come up with these values, they're already an average. Okay, so we're not finding averages. That's been done for us. We're finding the relationship between the averages, or the comparison between the averages. On average, how many weeks do Americans spend on vacation? How many weeks do Italians spend on vacation? Okay, so we don't have to come up with add everything up and divide by our total. Okay, we're not bringing average to the problem here. We're looking at how these two compare to each other. And that is cradled in this first part of this paragraph here. It says the average time Italians spend on vacation exceeds, it's more than, that tells me I'm going to add. So the Italians exceeds the average American vacation time by 4 weeks. Okay, so I've got, something is 4 weeks longer than something else. Okay, one is 4 weeks longer than the other. But is it that I is equal to A plus 4, Italians is equal to Americans plus 4, or is it that the Americans is the Italians plus 4? Well, it says that the Italians exceed the Americans by 4 weeks. So that means the Americans are smaller. The Americans are less. So if the Americans are less, we can't add 4 to the Italians and get Americans. We'd have to add 4 to the Americans and get Italians, okay? So they tell us that, here's where we actually do use this information here. We use less time. So that helps us translate what does it mean by exceeds? The story actually helps us do the translation. So for some of you, you might find these even more enjoyable because it gives you more clues to the translation when you look at the story of it. Okay, so this one is the right translation. We're going to start with I equals A plus 4. Now what else do they tell us? The combined vacation time is 11.8 weeks. So combined tells me I'm going to add American and Italian. Okay, so the combined of American plus Italian is, there's my translation here, is 11.8. Okay, so it's like they gave us 2 sentences here. We had 2 sentences in the paragraph and it translated to 2 equations. Now I'm just going to plant a little seed here. When we get to Math 65, just making sure my page is still in screen. When we get to Math 65, right off the bat in Chapter 5, we are going to have problems just like this, where we look at the 2 equations and we solve them as 2 equations. Okay, but that is not our skill right now. Right now our skill is to have one equation that kind of looks like ax plus b equals c, where there's only one variable. Okay, this is where a lot of people get frustrated until this gets pointed out to them. Okay, and that is that you're going to see these types of equations and problems again in Math 65. Only then we're going to keep them as 2 separate equations and develop some skills of how to solve for both variables, just staying with 2 equations the whole time. Here in the beginning, in Chapter 2 and Math 60, we're going to go ahead and combine or consolidate. In Math 60, we're going to consolidate to 1 equation. Okay? which means that we're going to substitute. Okay, so I have I equals a plus 4. So I have a way to describe the Italians. Instead of just saying the Italian amount, I can describe the Italians using Americans plus 4, which means I can replace in my second equation the Italians for the phrase a plus 4, because that still represents Italians. So I can take what I know the Italians equal, a plus 4, and put it where I see Italians. And what I've created here is an equation that only has one variable, and I know how to solve that. Okay? So let me walk through that again. The two sentences translated to two different equations. Italians exceed Americans by 4 weeks. I equals a plus 4. The combined vacation time for Americans and Italians is 11.8. Adding them together is 11.8. We don't know these two numbers, but they're giving us two separate clues about the relationship between those two numbers. And our skill in Math 60 that we're going to work on is consolidating them to one equation. So we take one equation, we pick the one that is solved for one of the variables, I equals a plus 4. We replace it with the I in the second equation, because if I know Italians is a plus 4, I can replace the Italians here with a plus 4. So that's all that happened. I have a plus I equals 11.8. Now I have a plus another way to write I equals 11.8. So that becomes a plus 4 equals 11.8. So now we have an equation, no more translating. We have our single equation, our single variable. Now we're going to use our solving skills from the beginning of chapter 2. I look for parentheses on either side of the equal sign. Nope, all taken care of. I look for like terms on either side of the equal sign. 11.8 is just hanging out by itself, nothing to do yet. But on the left side, I have an a plus another a plus 4. So 1a plus 1a is going to give me 2a plus 4 equals 11.8. And now I've simplified by combining all like terms on the left side. So now I ask myself, what's happening to a? I'm trying to get a all by itself here. For those of you that are going, wait a minute, I disappeared. Don't we have to find out both? Yes, we do have to find answers to both. We'll get there. Hang in there. Right now, we're approaching the problem as let's solve for one of the variables. Okay? So what's happening to a? It's getting multiplied by 2, and then 4 is being added to it. So I reverse the order. Adding 4 was last, so I do the opposite of that first. I subtract 4 from both sides. I get 2a is equal to minus 4 is going to be 7.8. Should line that up better. Now being multiplied by 2, we undo that by dividing both sides by 2, and I get a is equal to 3.9. So now I found out the average number for Americans. I can put that in here. We found that that's 3.9. 3.9 weeks is the average American time spent using vacation time. Okay? Pardon me. Oh, excuse me. Now we still have to figure out I. That's why it's so important to write your goal here. You don't stop until you've reached your goal. We were supposed to find both, the a value and the I value. Okay? Don't feel like you have to start this problem all over again. We came up with our a value. If you look back here where we took some information to replace, we can use that first equation to get our I value, because now we know a. We can now substitute again. Okay? So we're going to substitute once to get it to one equation, and then again to get our second answer. So we'll take our I equals a plus 4. We'll plug in our a value of 3.9. And 3.9 plus 4 is going to be 7.9. And then we can double check here. So we've got 7.9 weeks for our Italians. So this is 7.9. Let's see if it matches the situation here. Italians exceed Americans by 4 weeks, so Italians are higher by 4. Combined, it's 11.8. 7 plus 3 is 10. 0.9 plus 0.9 is 1.8. 10 and 1.8 is 11.8. So I'll just check in my head. These do check out. There's our answers. Americans 3.9 weeks, Italians 7.9. Okay. We'll see you at the bottom of the page for a couple more examples.